Hello everyone, it's time for lesson 8 in chapter 4. A little more information about the if statement. Okay, so right at the top we have our comment statements like we always do. You put your name, put the program description. In this case, we are discussing if statements. It's continued from lesson 7. And then of course you put the date. Next, as always, your include statements. As you can tell from the include statements I have here, we're going to be using cin and cout and using string variables. Naturally, we have our using namespace std, and then our function main starts here. So let me scroll down a little bit. Okay, so here we are at int main, or function main, right? And we're about to start the main part of our program. Now hopefully you are still pausing the videos and typing these things in, because the whole idea here is to give you practice. All right, so make sure you're doing that so that you can play with this and you can run it and see how things act and what they do. That's the whole idea. All right, so next, let's look at our input section. The first thing I did on the input section, I declared my variables. I have one line of string variables: f name for first name, l name for last name, emp name for the employer's name, and the date. And I put here employee information, okay, just to describe what this is about. Then I have doubles, and it's hours worked and wages. So that's the weekly hours and the wage that they make, like how many dollars per hour. Then I have double O hours, O pay, and O wage. These are overtime hours, overtime pay, and overtime wage. Then I have double gross pay, net pay, taxes, which I'm going to set at 0.10, which is 10%. Of course, the nice thing, if I use taxes as my variable in my program and taxes change, the only thing I have to change is this one location here and make it the new tax amount. And then every time the word taxes appears in my program, it's going to be whatever that new amount I used is, because it will propagate throughout the program. Okay, that one change here, if I use that variable, I only have to change it once. I don't have to search through the program and try to find every time that I was multiplying by the tax amount. All right, and I define here, I use a comment and say these are totals and taxes information. Okay, now here we start our prompts and our variables to hold the information. So we prompt our user to enter their first name, and we use f name for first name. Then we prompt them to enter their last name, and we use l name. I hope you are pausing the video and typing these in. The next one, cin ignore. Cout, enter your employer's name. Well, a lot of times employers' company names have more than one word, and you have to have spaces. So I decided to use getLine. Arkansas Tech University, that's 3 words. There's going to be spaces in that. So I need getLine. I use cin ignore because of the next line character that would exist from that cin statement here. So I say, well, ignore that next line character, and then we enter the employer's name, and then we do a cin, and they type in the employer's name, and it's stored in emp name. Cout, enter hours worked, and the variable that will hold the number of hours they type in is hours worked. Cout, enter hourly wage, and I put a $sign so that when they type it, it'll appear right there against the $sign. And they type a numerical amount, and it's stored under wage. Notice another cin ignore. Cout, enter the date. Date like September 24th, 2020. There's going to be spaces in that. So I used getLine, and I'm using cin, and date is my variable that's going to hold the date. Now, I use System CLS. This will clear the screen so that when my output is on the screen, it'll be clean and I won't have all these prompts and inputs that somebody typed in our information. All right, the next part is the part with the if statements. If the hours worked is more than 40, that would be what? If it's over 40 hours in a week, it's considered overtime. So I'm checking to see if they have overtime. Now notice I have a curly brace here. These curly braces allow you to use multiple statements and it treats them as one. So if this is true, yes, there is hours worked is more than 40, so they did have overtime. So then we want to do this math. We want to say, well, to get how many hours of overtime they worked, I'm going to subtract 40 from the number of hours they worked, and if they worked 4 hours overtime, that's what O hours would be. And then I say, well, if they make $10 an hour, then they'll get time and a half, so that'll give them $15 an hour for their wage in the overtime wage. And then, of course, we multiply how many hours of overtime by their overtime wage to get their overtime pay. And then the gross pay, the total pay, would be their 40 hours times their normal wage plus their overtime pay. And like I said, the curly brace makes these all treated as one statement. So that's everything that happens if hours worked is greater than 40. Else, gross pay is going to be hours worked times wage. There is no overtime to worry about. Notice I didn't need the curly brace because there's only one line statement here. So if there's more than one line, you're going to need the curly brace. Now here's your to-do list for Chapter 4, Lesson 8, Payroll Assignment. Determine taxes withheld. Determine net pay. Output everything to the screen. Your deductions are a way of reducing the amount of tax that we have to pay. The higher the number of deductions that we can claim, the lower the tax rate we have to pay. So you need to remember that when you set up your taxes for your payroll. In the output section, I want you to include first name, last name, hourly wage, employer name, hours worked, gross pay, net pay, taxes, date, overtime wage, overtime hours, overtime pay. What is overtime? When you work more than 40 hours in a week, you can get overtime pay. Whatever your hourly wage is equal to, you multiply that value by 1.5, which will equal your overtime pay rate. For example, if I work 45 hours this week and I make $10 per hour, I will have 5 hours of overtime because it's 5 hours over 40. And to get my overtime pay rate, I multiply my $10 times 1.5, which gives me $15 per hour. And then I would determine overtime hours is going to be the hours I worked minus 40 hours. The overtime wage is wage times 1.5. The overtime pay is overtime hours times overtime wage. And our gross pay is going to be 40 times the wage plus any overtime that we have. Now I'm not going to do this for you. I want you to figure this part out. The next part, if statements allow for programs to follow a path based on user input. Below is an example. If I take this out, there, now it's not a comment. If I use integer age is my variable and it's an integer. Cout, enter your age and then type in an age. If age is greater than 18, then all these statements will be put on the screen because I have these curly braces around them. They're treated like one big giant statement. You are 18 years old or over. I'm going to add an S there. There we go. You can vote now. You file taxes on your own now. Okay, that's what would be printed if they are over 18 or equal to 18, right? Greater than or equal to. Else, so if this is not true right here in the parentheses, else, cout, you are not 18 years old or over. Okay, so that's what happens. The braces are optional when you have only one line of code after an if statement or an else statement. Braces are required if you have more than one line of code after an if statement or else statement. Okay, that's the end of lesson 8. I challenge you to get out there and make this fun and do a really good job. And I'll talk to you again soon.